At my daughter's beach wedding, her fiancé smirked across his champagne flute and said, $50,000, Grace. Pay up, or vanish from our lives forever. I blinked, searching his face for even a hint of humor. There was none. Then Rebecca leaned in, her gown glistening under the Cape Cod sun. Her words were soft but sharp enough to cut through me. Or enjoy your solitude in a retirement home, Mom. That might suit you better. I raised my glass, letting the light catch it like a blade, and whispered, You forgot one thing. Their smiles faltered, color drained from their faces. Chaos would come soon, but not from me. I wouldn't have to lift a finger. 3 hours earlier, I'd arrived at the Ocean View Resort alone. The taxi driver, sensing my hesitation as we pulled up to the glittering entrance, had offered a kind smile. Beautiful place for a wedding, he'd said, helping with my single bag. I'd smoothed the pale blue dress I'd bought after months of saving tips my one indulgence. My daughter's getting married, I'd manage, though pride caught in my throat. Stepping onto the manicured lawn, I felt like an intruder. Guests drifted among designer gowns and silk ties, laughing. Like champagne fizz. My dress wasn't couture, my bag not a statement piece. One woman's eyes swept over me, pausing on my sensible shoes before she dismissed me with the kind of smile reserved for waitstaff. I gripped my invitation tighter and searched for Rebecca. When I finally found her, wrapped in a silk robe and surrounded by bridesmaids, her greeting was ice. Mom, you're late. No hug, no warmth, just a reprimand. Your dress is fine. Just try not to embarrass us. Her coordinator was summoned to escort me away to table 19, shoved in a far corner. Out of sight. 2 hours later, I watched Rebecca glide down the aisle in a gown that had cost more than my rent for half a year, radiant, distant, a stranger dressed as a princess. I sat in the shadows, unacknowledged, my pride calcified into something brittle and sharp. When her new husband approached me with champagne, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps a gesture of welcome? Grace, he said with that perfect hollow smile. Enjoying yourself? Yes, I replied cautiously. You and Rebecca must be very happy. We are, he agreed. Then his tone shifted, velvet over steel. Though, there's the matter of your contribution. 50,000 should cover it. The bubbles in my glass suddenly tasted like ash. David, I don't have. His eyes hardened, though his smile never moved. Appearances matter. Rebecca's already embarrassed by your circumstances. The least you can do is pay for the inconvenience. Inconvenience, I repeated. Stunned. Rebecca appeared at his side, glowing in the fading sun. Mom, did David talk to you about our arrangement? 50,000? My voice cracked out. Her smile didn't. It's not much. We invited you, despite his parents' concerns. We gave you a seat. If you can't contribute, maybe it's best we part ways. Arizona has some wonderful retirement homes. I looked at the daughter I had bled for 3 jobs at once, years of sacrifice, every dollar poured into her education, her dreams. She stood beside him like royalty addressing a peasant. Something inside me shifted, not grief, not rage, a chilling certainty. I sipped my champagne slowly, savoring the silence that stretched between us. Then I whispered, You forgot one thing. For the first time that day, I saw fear in their eyes. I excused myself, heels clicking against the stone path as I walked away. They had no idea what was coming. They couldn't. I had been preparing for this moment far longer than they realized, and as the sun dipped low, I wasn't thinking of their wedding. I was back in Boston, 18. Years ago, rain pelting the window as I pressed trembling fingers to my bruised cheek. Tom's snores thundered from the bedroom. 4-year-old Rebecca had watched everything from the hall, clutching her stuffed rabbit, her tears silent. That was the night I made my choice. Not because it was the worst beating, it wasn't, but because of her eyes. The look of a child, learning that violence was love. I packed in silence. Her clothes, the rabbit, our passports, and the cash I'd hidden inside a hollowed-out copy of Pride and Prejudice. $237, all I had. When I lifted Rebecca from her bed, she whispered, "Are we going on an adventure, Mommy?" "Yes, baby," I'd said, steady despite the terror coursing through me. The biggest adventure. And we disappeared into the storm. When I paid 3 months' rent in advance with my very first paychecks, I thought it was a promise, a foundation for the life Rebecca and I would build together. The pull-out couch in that cramped apartment became my bed for 7 long years. Every night, I unfolded it only after tucking Rebecca into the single bedroom, whispering goodnight while my body ached from double shifts. 10 hours at Sunny's Diner, pouring coffee and serving eggs, followed by evenings at Dr. Miller's dental office, answering phones until closing. Exhaustion was my constant companion, but so were moments of pure light. Rebecca's face the day she read her first sentence is seared into my memory. The cat sat on the mat. "I did it, Mommy." I read it all by myself. Her eyes had shone brighter than any diamond. I pulled her close, telling her she was the smartest girl in the world. And I meant it. We celebrated victories with small rituals, cupcakes. From the grocery store, 6 in a plastic container, stretched carefully over days. Losing her first tooth, straight A's, a spelling bee win, each milestone crowned with frosting and laughter. One day, I'd promise as we sat at our wobbly kitchen table, "You'll have everything I never had. College, beautiful clothes. A life free from worry." Her sticky lips would smile, and she'd ask, "Will you be there too, Mommy?" "Always," I promised. And I kept that promise through middle school, through high school, through scraped knees and late-night study sessions. When she was 10, I opened a savings account just for her education. Sometimes it was only $5 a week. Sometimes more when I picked up holiday shifts. The day her acceptance letter from Boston University arrived, she danced around our tiny apartment, clutching the envelope like a golden ticket. I cried that night tears of pride and panic. Pride for her brilliance, panic for the tuition I couldn't possibly afford. By morning, I had a plan. In addition to the diner and the dental office, I took on inventory shifts at a department store and began cleaning houses in Back Bay. My world became a blur of uniforms, bus routes, and catnaps on public benches. When Rebecca came home on weekends, I dyed the gray from my hair, put on my brightest smile, and hid the exhaustion that clung to my bones. She never saw that some nights I was too tired to untie my shoes before collapsing. At first, she noticed my effort. She introduced me proudly to her college friends. "My mom works harder than anyone I know," she'd say, and my heart would swell. But something shifted in her junior year. She stopped visiting as often, and when she did, her phone was a constant companion. I'll never forget the look on her face when her new friend Alyssa visited our apartment. Alyssa, polished and rich, glanced around our mismatched furniture and water-stained ceiling. "This is cozy," she said politely. Rebecca flushed crimson. "We're moving soon," she lied quickly. "Mom just hasn't had time to look for a new place." Later that night, she suggested maybe it was better if she stayed at school on weekends. "The library has better resources for my classes anyway," she said, avoiding my eyes. I nodded, swallowing the hurt. Whatever helped her succeed. I didn't tell her I'd already picked up a 6th shift of the diner to cover her books. Still, she soared. She graduated with honors. That day, I clapped until my hands ached, my palms raw and hidden beneath gloves. Every crack in my skin was worth it. Watching her stride across that stage in cap and gown was the fulfillment of every promise I had ever whispered to her in the dark. 2 weeks later, My phone rang at 11:43 p.m., just as I'd crawled into bed after a double shift. Mom, Rebecca's voice trembled through the receiver. Are you awake? I need to talk. I sat up instantly. What's wrong, sweetheart? Are you okay? I found it, Mom, she said, breathless, words tumbling out between tears and laughter. My dream. My purpose. She told me about a vacant storefront in Beacon Hill, all exposed brick and hardwood floors, a place she could see transformed into a boutique, curated pieces for professional women. Unique items. I can do this, Mom. I know I can. Her voice glowed with hope, but then it cracked. The landlord wants first and last month's rent plus security by next week. And renovations, inventory. I don't have the money. No bank will loan to someone fresh out of college. Mom, what do I do? How much? I asked. I don't expect. How much, Rebecca? The silence stretched before she whispered. 97,000, the figure echoed in my skull. It might as well have been $1 million, more than I had in savings. But I had my retirement account, the modest future I'd built dollar by dollar for 18 years. My entire safety. Net, I'll have it for you by Monday, I promised. She gasped. Mom, that's everything you have. Not everything, I said softly. I have you. 3 days later, I sat in Sarah Miller's office, an old friend who now worked as a paralegal at a respected law firm. She'd lived on my couch once, back when her own life had fallen apart. Now it was my turn to ask for help. Grace, she said, adjusting her glasses, her tone grave. Are you absolutely sure? This is every penny you've saved. I'm sure, I replied without hesitation. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Then we're doing this my way. She slid legal papers across the desk. You'll be a 51% silent partner, Rebecca's business. She'd be the face of it, but you'll have protection. I tried to protest, but Sarah silenced me. This isn't just about you. It protects Rebecca, too. Reluctantly, I signed. When we presented the paperwork to Rebecca, she barely skimmed. The pages, too excited, too full of dreams. She signed quickly, her smile wide, her future glowing. 3 months later, Rebecca's closet opened its doors. The grand opening was modest cheap champagne, a borrowed cheese platter, handwritten. Invitations. I stood quietly in the corner, watching her bloom. Welcoming customers with a charm I had always known was inside her dot at first. Business was slow, quiet nights, empty racks. I slipped her extra money to cover rent, never saying a word. Then, fate intervened. Alyssa, the same friend who once found our apartment cozy, was now a lifestyle influencer. She stopped by one afternoon, tried on a bold blue dress from an unknown Brooklyn designer, and posted it online. By morning, Rebecca's boutique was buzzing. By afternoon, there was a line out the door. By week's end, her shelves were bare. Rebecca's closet had become the name on every fashionable woman's lips. The boutique blossomed faster than I ever imagined. Within months, local magazines listed it as a hidden gem. Social media influencers showed off their curated finds, and word of mouth carried it into the city's trendy circles. 6 months in, Rebecca was already eyeing the empty space next door. I watched it all with a pride so fierce it almost hurt. My daughter, my brilliant, unstoppable daughter, was soaring higher than anything I had dared to dream when I fled with her all those years ago. But I kept myself invisible during her business hours. I only showed up after closing, slipping in to help with books, restocking, or cleaning. Rebecca never told me to stay away. That decision was mine. I knew my discount rack clothes and rough hands didn't belong in the polished image she worked so hard to create. Come by sometime during the day, she'd say, but there was never real warmth behind it. And I'd always answer lightly, your world now, not mine. I'm happy just seeing the results. The first cut came unexpectedly. About a year after opening, I decided to surprise her with dinner. I arrived a little earlier than usual and found the boutique still open, customers browsing the fall line. I slipped in quietly, watching from behind a rack of cashmere sweaters dotted the counter. A well-dressed woman complimented Rebecca. "This is remarkable. How did you manage something like this right out of college?" I waited, smiling to myself, certain she would acknowledge the sacrifices, the late nights, the silent support that built this dream with her. Instead, Rebecca tossed her hair and said, "I built this from nothing. Just grit, vision, and determination. Nobody handed me anything. I made it happen." Her words struck me like blows. Nobody handed me anything. Nobody. The boutique, built on my life savings, had become her solo triumph. In her story, I no longer existed. I slipped out before she saw me. Clutching the dinner, I no longer had the heart to give. Outside, leaning against the brick wall, I tried to tell myself this was what I wanted, her independence, her confidence. But walking home alone, I felt something shift. She hadn't just taken credit. She truly believed I was never part of it. After that, I stayed even further in the shadows. I reviewed statements that her assistant Sarah forwarded, handled invoices, balanced books, but always behind the curtain. I became a ghost in my daughter's story. Then came the invitation that startled me. Mom, the Boston Chamber of Commerce, is hosting their small business gala. I'm being recognized as one of the entrepreneurs under 30, and I need a +1. Will you come? For a moment, I just stared. She laughed nervously. Otherwise, Alyssa will come again and people already think we're dating. I said yes, hiding the spark of hope that maybe this was her olive branch. That night, I spent more than I should have. Hair appointment, a clearance navy dress that looked more expensive than it was. When Rebecca picked me up, she gave me a once over and said, surprised, "You look nice, Mom. Very appropriate." At the gala, she moved like someone I barely knew, graceful, magnetic, commanding every glance. I hovered close enough to appear part of her world, yet far enough to let her shine. Her acceptance speech was brief and flawless. She spoke of her vision, her dedication, her dream. My contribution again was absent. By now, the omission no longer burned, only a dull ache where recognition used to live. "Impressive young woman," a deep voice said beside me. I turned to see him, a man in his early 30s, striking, expensive suit, sharp eyes that missed nothing. "She's my daughter," I said softly. Something flickered in his gaze. "David Harrington," he introduced himself, extending a hand. The name was heavy, familiar old money. Skyscrapers with his family's name etched across the city's skyline. "Grace Foster," I replied, and his eyes swept over me quickly, assessing, measuring, before he asked, "And what do you do?" I gave my usual vague line, "I'm in the service industry." Just then, Rebecca appeared, breathless. "There you are, Mom. I've been looking everywhere." But her attention snapped instantly to him. The chemistry was immediate, blinding. A spark struck in front of me as David introduced himself to her with animated charm that had been absent with me. Within minutes, I was no longer part of the exchange. He asked about her boutique, her expansion plans, her vision for the future. She glowed under his attention. By the end of the night, he had her number and a promise to tour her store. 3 days later, they were on their first date. 2 weeks later, inseparable, her calls to me dwindled to nothing. Dinners were canceled, rescheduled. When we did meet, David filled every silence, talking of real estate, power, ambition. His questions to me were never about me, only about what advantage I might hold in his world. I noticed the patterns. Expensive gifts she could never repay. Subtle critiques cloaked as advice. Her independence slowly reshaped into his version of success. David's just helping me, Mom, she said whenever I tried to warn her. He knows how things work at his level. He's teaching me and his family. Have you met them yet? I asked once. A flicker of unease crossed her face. They travel a lot. I'll meet them when it's time. Then one morning, scrolling Facebook, I saw it before I heard it. A photograph of Rebecca's hand, a diamond the size of my savings sparkling on her finger. Caption, I said yes to forever with my SOULMATE. No phone call, no warning. Just a perfect picture, her future signed away with a hashtag. Hashtag future Mrs. Harrington. I stared at the screen until my hands shook. Finally, I called her. Were you ever going to tell me? I whispered when she answered. Her voice was bright, breathless. Oh, Mom, yes, I was going to call tonight. David surprised me with the proposal yesterday. We've been celebrating ever since. Isn't it wonderful? It's very sudden, was all I managed. When you know, she said lightly, as if dismissing the weight of a lifetime. We're thinking spring. Elegant but intimate. The next morning, text lit up my phone. One not meant for me. Your mom can't sit with my family at dinner. My parents would be mortified. Put her at the vendor table in the back. My chest went cold. It was from David, meant for Rebecca. I waited for her defense, for some sign that my daughter would protect me. Instead, 7 silent minutes passed before another pinged. Mom, can you believe the planner wants extra for rose gold flatware? This is so stressful. A diversion, not a denial. Not even a crumb of reassurance. I replied with a bland note of support while betrayal settled into me like ice water. 2 weeks later, after unanswered calls and growing dread, I appeared at her apartment unannounced. No answer, just her laptop glowing on the counter. I had never crossed that line before, but fear, instinct, something heavier than curiosity guided my hand. The spreadsheet looked harmless at first. Budgets, vendor lists, timelines, but one tab caught me. Labeled quietly, almost innocently, Mom Management. I clicked. Strategies, bullet points. Schedule her with non-essential vendors to make her feel included. Limit her visibility during key moments. Maximize financial contributions while maintaining boundaries. At the bottom, a note highlighted in yellow. From David. Remember the end goal: full financial support, minimal interference. After the wedding, distance becomes easier. I staggered. Back, breath shallow. This wasn't a daughter too busy or distracted. This was a plan. A strategy to extract what they needed, then cut me loose. That night, I called Sarah. I need your help, I whispered. And I need you not to ask questions. Whatever you need, she said without hesitation. If I activated my majority stake in the boutique, what would happen? Her pause was long, deliberate. You'd have authority to freeze assets, review contracts, trigger an audit. You could take control. Grace, what's going on? I'm not pulling the trigger, I said, steadier than I felt. I'm building a contingency plan. For the first time in 22 years, I had to put myself first. In the weeks before the wedding, Sarah and I worked in silence. We gathered bank statements, found records of secret investor meetings, followed the money siphoned from the boutique into personal accounts. Piece by piece, the betrayal became undeniable. David was guiding her to restructure the business, preparing to erase me completely. Once we begin, Sarah warned, 3 days before the ceremony, there's no undoing it. I looked at the envelopes spread across her table, heavy with evidence and legal orders. My hands didn't shake. I'm not doing anything yet. I'm just making sure we're ready. And the trigger? She pressed. I thought of every small cut, every diminishing glance, every note in that spreadsheet. I'll know when it happens, I said. The trigger came on the beach. Their ultimatum: $50,000 or my absence from their lives forever. The final confirmation. You forgot one thing, I whispered, and I saw it. The flicker of fear in their eyes. Later, I excused myself, not to powder my nose, but to disappear along the wooden boardwalk until the noise of the reception faded behind me. I found a bench between two dunes facing the ocean. The sun was sinking, gilding the waves in amber, beauty clashing against the ugliness of what I had just witnessed. My hands were steady as I pulled out my phone. Sandcastle time. 3 dots appeared. Then Sarah's reply, understood. Deliveries in motion. Legal team standing by. Are you okay? I will be, I typed back. I sat for 7 full minutes, inhaling the salt air, saying goodbye to the daughter I thought I had. When I returned, I slipped through the edges of the reception, unseen, watching. The coordinator approached David's parents first, handed them an envelope with quiet professionalism. This was delivered for you. One by one, the investors David had brought in behind my back opened their own. Faces shifted, confusion, concern, anger, and across the room I saw David's. Father stiffened as the weight of truth unfolded in his hands. He shot up so fast his chair screeched against the polished floor, napkin tumbling unnoticed to his feet. His face flushed crimson, eyes darting across the crowded room until they locked on his son. With long, purposeful strides, he cut through the sea of guests toward the bar dot, and then it began an eerie chorus of chimes and vibrations rippling. Across the reception, phones lit up in unison. Rebecca's business email address had become a weapon, firing off automated alerts to every client, partner, and employee tied to the boutique. Each message, crafted meticulously by Sarah's legal team, carried the same devastating news: a full company audit, frozen assets, and suspension of all business operations. I slipped quietly from my corner, keeping to the edges of the chaos. From there, I caught sight of David locked in a heated, whispered argument with his father. The elder man's finger jabbed furiously at the damning papers clutched in his hand. Beside them, Rebecca stood stiff, her porcelain facade cracking. Fear flickered across her carefully painted features, and then she saw me. Her heels clicked frantically against the marble floor as she rushed forward, panic shimmering in her eyes. Mom, what's happening? Everyone's getting these insane emails about the boutique. Not insane, I replied, calm and deliberate, accurate. I'm simply exercising my rights as majority owner. David appeared a heartbeat later, all traces of his polished charm stripped away. His voice was low, venomous. What have you done? I protected my investment, I said evenly, refusing to flinch. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? The secret investors? The missing funds? Rebecca's complexion drained beneath her foundation. Her lips trembled. We can explain. It was temporary. Just to build capital for expansion, David's side project. The South End development I finished for her. The one that somehow received $200,000 siphoned directly from the boutique, without my consent, without the majority owner's knowledge. David's gaze darted to his parents. They were now locked in tense conversation with another couple, both pairs holding identical damning documents. His father's face darkened by the second, his gestures sharp with fury. You don't understand what you've done, David hissed. My family has connections you can't even imagine. I tilted my head toward the elder Harrington, who looked one step away from disowning his son in public. Funny, I murmured, because right now your father looks less like a man with influence and more like a man realizing his son turned a boutique into a piggy bank for a failing real estate gamble. The horror on their faces said it all. They had never seen me. Not really. To them, I was just an aging woman with working-class roots, someone they could charm, manipulate, and discard when it suited them. Mom? Rebecca's voice cracked. her tears spilling freely, streaking her flawless makeup into ruin. You can't let this happen, please. Everything we've worked for, it'll all be destroyed. No, my voice softened, but it was laced with steel. Everything I worked for, everything I sacrificed, everything I built while you paraded it as your own triumph. Her jeweled hand clutched my arm, her diamond ring catching the light as if to blind me into submission. Her voice dropped to a plea. I'm your daughter, your only child. You can't do this to me. For the briefest moment, I felt it, the instinct I had carried since the day she was born, to protect, to shield, to give everything, even when it left me with nothing. But then I remembered the spreadsheet that reduced me to a line item, the smug toasts over champagne, the cold-blooded plan to erase me from the business I had bled to build, and my resolve hardened like stone. Still, after all these years, the instinct to protect tugged at me. But then I remembered the spreadsheet reducing me to a liability, the champagne toast sealing my exile, the casual cruelty of their plans. I already did, I whispered. You both showed me exactly who you are, and I believed you. David's phone buzzed violently, his father's name flashing on the screen. Across the room, the elder Harrington barked into his own phone, face twisted with fury. Rebecca's device chimed again, wave after wave of legal notifications flooding in. Around us, the elegant reception unraveled into chaos clusters of guests whispering. Servers frozen mid-step, conversations laced with disbelief. We can pay you, David pleaded, desperation cracking through his smooth facade. 50,000, 100, name your price. I shook my head. This was never about money. Rebecca clutched at me one last time, her diamond ring glinting like a false promise. Mom, please. Just tell me how to fix this. I looked at her, my daughter, draped in a gown that cost more than a year of my mortgage payments. For a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. You can't, I said simply. Some things, once broken, stay broken. And with that, I turned away. My steps were slow, steady, deliberate. Behind me, voices rose in confusion, panic, betrayal. Staff stepped aside instinctively, as if they sensed this was not a woman to be stopped at the edge of the property. I slipped off my heels, carrying them in one hand as I stepped onto the cool sand. The sun dipped toward the horizon, gilding the waves in gold. With every step down the endless stretch of beach, the weight of sacrifice fell from my shoulders. For the first time in decades, I was walking for myself, free of being needed only for what I could give. Finally free to choose what I wanted. 3 miles down, Sarah's sensible sedan waited, and with it, the start of something new. Not a replacement, not revenge dressed as a business, but a boutique of my own, small and quiet, for women who valued substance over status. Something that was mine and mine alone. I never looked back at the glittering resort or the wreckage I left behind. Rebecca had taken everything I had to give. Now, at last, it was my turn. If this story of sweet revenge kept you hooked till the very end, don't forget to hit that like button. My favorite moment? When Grace whispered at the wedding, you forgot one thing, knowing the trap was already set. What about you? Tell me your favorite part in the comments. And make sure you're subscribed. There are plenty more stories you won't want to miss.